I'm Sarah Jensen, editor of OEM Off Highway, and welcome to Design and Engineering Insights. Today, I'm speaking with Will Healy and Robert Crumley from Balluff about trends in data, connectivity, and IoT. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Sarah. Good morning.
So if we could maybe just sort of start talking about maybe some of the benefits, things you guys are seeing in regards to creation of smarter systems through the integration of sensors and measurement devices. How does that kind of stuff help with the collection of data and connection of machines and systems?
Well, it all starts with smarter sensors. Sensors that not only provide information for the original intent, such as position feedback of a linkage or something like that, but also other parameters, maybe ambient temp or humidity or life data. How much stress has the product been subjected to? Smarter systems will continue to need more processing power and memory capabilities to handle the additional data from these new smarter sensors. Today's systems are already collecting a lot of valuable data. Who owns it? How is it shared? These are concerns right now. What to do with all that data is still an issue to be solved. The sensors today, they're ready for real-time condition-based maintenance, which will be the ultimate goal in reducing unplanned downtime, lowering costs. Systems and the handling of the data, they need more time.
Yeah, I agree with Rob. I think one of the things that really comes from more sensors is, right now, mostly what we're tracking on the trucks and the vehicles and the equipment is where is it and is it running or not?
Yeah.
That's really the main thing that most people care about. But the trick moving forward is we're going to have to investigate if it's not running, why is it not running? And so being able to look at that extra data that Rob talked about, like temperature, humidity, remaining lifetime of a product, being able to get that out of more devices on the machine and on the equipment, that's going to be important. So not only being able to dive down to an individual truck, but inside the truck to a specific sensor or a specific device or a specific location on the truck to be able to know more about what's going on in our fleet.
And are you guys seeing, are there specific components or systems which people are focusing on integrating the sensors and technologies to gain data? Is it just kind of across the board or?
Yeah, it's kind of across the board. I mean, originally you need a sensor to do a certain function. Maybe it's going to, make a cylinder smarter or make sure that safety feature is proper position or something like that. So there's always that original need to get some sort of a feedback on the machine that this linkage is in the right place. But since you've got that sensor there and we've got that capability to make those sensors even smarter, we can start collecting more information around that area, vibration, temperature, things like that.
And I would add, right now, maybe you're considering a sensor like an outrigger. Is the outrigger out or not, right? And a lot of people do that just with a discrete position sensor. Is it out, yes or no? What if it's only a third of the way out? What if it's only 3/4 of the way out? What if you want to be able to regulate where the outrigger is based upon all kinds of dynamics of the function of the vehicle? Right now, I would say adding capabilities is trying to go beyond just on and off, but getting actual position data or measurement data out of the device, not just a certain physical switch point, because that's going to give us more flexibility in the equipment and more effectiveness of the machine. We'll be able to do more things because it has those kinds of devices in there. So I think by adding more capability to the sensing devices we're already picking, like a measurement position versus an on-off position, I think it's adding a lot of benefit in the usability of the equipment and the flexibility of the equipment. And so, if we're buying a piece of capital equipment, we want to be able to utilize it as much as possible. We don't want it just sitting in a parking lot somewhere.
So what are some of the challenges you guys are seeing regarding adding smarter systems or integrating sensors into systems? And are there ways you guys are working to overcome those challenges, or are there more technologies or something needed in order to overcome some of those challenges?
Sensors for mobile equipment, must contend with voltage supply, dips, transient spikes, load dumps, electromagnetic interference. These are all dangers to any electrical device on a mobile machine. But these are all pretty well understood phenomena. There's plenty of SAE and EN type specifications that are out there that can be used as guidelines. Or perhaps the OEM says you must adhere to this SAE spec or something like that. Those have been worked out through time, and the sensors need that in there, but that's the well understood part. The ingress protection, the temperature specs, again, it's harsh environments. Typical sensor designed for industrial use may not have the temp range or something like that. And so when you're looking at mobile equipment, there's some small changes which can create challenges for a sensor manufacturer. But a newer challenge would be like data overload. Really, the OEMs, they need to decide, what messages should I collect? How often should I pass on those messages? Where do you do the analytics? Is it in the control module? Is that capable of processing and storing large amounts of data from a smart sensor? A lot of people involved in this right now, but this is kind of the newer challenges that are coming, cloud, edge computing, better software. We continue to get better and better, but at the same time, we may be building big data lakes full of data that doesn't really help anybody. It just overwhelms them. You got to have a good data management plan. And you got to know what you really care about. What are your metrics?
I'll double down on building a giant data lake full of data from your vehicles. It can just create an overwhelming sense of, I don't know what to do, or the data is not organized in a way that you can actually do the analytics you want to do. I mean, if you think about it, one sensor generating 2 bytes of data every 20 milliseconds is 100 bytes of data a second, 6,000 bytes a minute, 360,000 bytes an hour, 8.6 megabytes a day, 3.2 gigabytes per year, per sensor, per vehicle, per fleet.
Wow.
So if you've got, 10 sensors on 100 vehicles in your fleet, you are generating an immense amount of data. So how often is that data important to you? And what data is important to you? And what are your KPIs and what are your metrics? And what data do you need to collect to measure those metrics is really important to decide up front. Or you're going to be paying for some serious Amazon data farm that you aren't actually using or utilizing. So having a plan up front, I think, is really the key part when you look at the challenge of trying to do analytics or data collection across a fleet and across smart devices.
And so is that something then Balluff would help a customer with, or would you guys kind of work with them and talk about what is important to keep in mind when integrating these technologies?
Traditional vehicle manufacturers, they might not need that amount of data. I think really when you start diving into autonomous vehicles and construction automation and mining automation and even agricultural automation, you start getting into these areas where you're having driverless work activity being done. You need more diagnostics. There's not someone there to hear something's going wrong in the gearbox. You've got to have a sensor there providing data that something's going wrong in the gearbox. So I think it really, where we see people engaging with this topic most is when they're trying to do general automation applications. Even driver-present automation applications. But I would say when you put automation in place, that's a place where you start needing sensors and diagnostics and those kinds of things. That's where we're seeing the activity right now.
Well, then just the last question I had was if you guys or Balluff in general sees growing interest or trend towards more data connectivity and IoT capabilities in heavy equipment. It kind of seems like it's going that direction, but other trends or things related to the integration of these technologies you guys see in the coming years, or maybe some further or other key drivers that will lead to more integration of these?
Yeah, definitely there's been a growing interest in IoT type products for mobile equipment. And there's a host of reasons why a manufacturer would seek us out beyond the smart sensors. Of course, they're looking for, predictive maintenance or better maintenance of their equipment. They may need to adhere to the latest safety spec, which is calling out for more feedback on the machine. The labor force issue all the time, how do I make my machine easier to use? Especially if it's a machine that's going to be bought by a rental company. And now you've got lots of different people at different skill levels running the machine. I just read an article, came out a week or two ago in a wonderful trade magazine called OEM Off Highway, where where a large excavator manufacturer is touting this, auto tilt control, so that the bucket of the excavator automatically tilts to the terrain to match the terrain. And that's the kind of thing I need. If I were to run an excavator, I would make a mess of things for quite a while, at least the first couple of weeks or so. And having that auto tilt control certainly would make me look like more of a pro. And those are the kinds of things that, you're going to get more work done, right? So there's a lot of motivation out there, and a lot of it has to do with the workforce. But also on the other side, we've been working with in the ag world, agricultural equipment in this growing field called precision ag, where you've got autonomous vehicles going around taking soil samples and things like that. A lot of those guys that we're working with are actually come from the industrial controls industry. And of course, we've been in that for 99 years. So there's a lot of different forces driving this, but it's all kind of steamrolling in that direction of smarter is safer, is saving money.
I really agree with Rob. I think, and I mentioned it before, automation really is one of those things that's really helping and is one of the reasons that there is a drive towards this. I think the lack of skilled workers, there's a lot of reports about robots taking jobs and those kinds of things. But really, when you think about the automation and precision agriculture, we have a lack of skilled workers. And so how can the equipment do more work with either less skilled workers or just generally less workers? So I think that's a great point that Rob made. I think the second thing is I started off our conversation talking about the health of machines, and, we just wanted to know, is it operating and where is it physically? But more and more, we need to know more about how the machine's working. It's kind of like if you were to go to the doctor and the only questions they asked you were, how old are you and where do you live and where have you traveled in the last 6 months? If those were the only questions that they asked you, they wouldn't really know much about you. They've got to take blood work and they've got to make a physical exam, and they have to really get under the hood and analyze what's going on with you. So the same deal with our equipment. If we're not actually deep diving to the individual devices, we're not really truly knowing if our vehicles are functioning. We're not able to predict problems. The worst thing that can happen is we rent out a piece of equipment, it goes to a job site, and 5 hours into the job for 3 weeks, 5 hours into the job, the equipment fails. And we could have predicted that if we had been looking under the proverbial hood and really predicting what are things that could fail, doing that maintenance. So there's no loss of productivity when a piece of equipment's on a job site.
Well, great. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time to speak with me today and provide insight into the trends in the industry.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Sarah.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It was really fun.